They're feeling hopeless. They're discouraged. Let's read verses 15 and 16. Anybody?
And it came to pass that while they communed together and reasoned, Jesus himself drew near and went with them, but their eyes were holden that they should not know him.
So they didn't know him. Jesus draws near to them. We know the story. We're reading it because I think it's good to read it. But Jesus draws near to them. They don't know him. We've got similar accounts. Mary at the tomb, the disciples in the room when they were locked up in fear. They did not know him. And people have a lot to say about that. There's a woman, her name is Paula Darcy. She works with Richard Rohr a lot. She's got a saying that I think is great. God comes to you disguised as your life. Here Jesus is right there, walking with them, and they don't know him. I think that is the pattern. It was by design, and that is the pattern. What I mean by that is this. All of us in here know the Lord in the way that we know him. But I think by virtue of what he demonstrated, that's not the plan. The plan is not, like all of us in this room, Russ, I know you as I know you, but I don't know you fully. And we'll continue for the rest of our lives to get to know each other more, you and I. All of us in this room carry that same thing. We get to know each other more. I think what Jesus was showing us quite clearly is I am going to come to you in times and places you're not going to recognize me. But I guarantee you this, if you're looking for me, you will. One of the main reasons that they don't recognize him is they're not looking for him. Why would they? He's dead. I wouldn't be looking for Jesus if I saw him die on a cross. So in my mind, in my faith, in my understanding, in my perception, everything about me, he's gone. He's dead. The passage actually says their eyes were restrained. So the question really has to be asked, by what? What does that mean, their eyes were restrained? What was restraining their eyes? Any thoughts? Faith literally trains our eyes to see and recognize Christ. And depending on the Christ that we understand, depending on our experiences, which are limited, and the limit of our expectations and our limitation of our imaginations will produce what we will see and what we won't. Now, you can go online and read articles about this. You can go online and read about how imagination shapes reality. It's fascinating, actually. What we're really driving at here is they simply were not looking for him. It's a simple, they just weren't looking for him. Why? Because they had an experience and now they're left with a certain thing they believe. The question is this, after Jesus said repeatedly, but on the third day I will rise from the dead. Yeah, all these things will happen, but I will rise from the dead. What they're stuck on is what they saw a few days earlier, which is going to lead into something in a minute. He was dead to them and he was dead on the road that they were on, which was going towards Emmaus. Would you read verse 17, somebody?
And he said to them, what are these words that you are exchanging with one another as you are walking? And they stood still, looking sad.
So he asked them what kind of conversation. And that's a great question to ask someone you love. Conversation is representation of like life. What kind of a conversation? What kind of a life? So what's your conversation like today? Is it, filled with hope? Is it filled with faith? I mean, what is our conversation like? Jesus asked them what their conversation is like, and like Mary read, they were sad. Do you remember the rich young ruler? After he has his encounter with Jesus, he walks away sad. He had no reason to be sad, but he walks away. And when he walks away from Jerusalem, he's sad. And now what he's walking away with is, well, that didn't work out. That didn't fit. That didn't go the way it was supposed to. Verses 18 through 27.
And one of them, named Cleopas, answered and said to him, are you the only one visiting Jerusalem and unaware of the things which have happened here in these days? And he said to them, what things? And they said to him, the things about Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word in the sight of God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him up to the sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. Indeed, besides all this, it is the third day since these things happened. But also some women among us amazed us when they were at the tomb early in the morning and did not find his body. They came saying that they had also seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. And some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just exactly as the woman had also said, but him they did not see. And he said to them, O foolish men and slow of heart to believe on all that the prophets have spoken. Was it not necessary for the Christ to suffer these things and to enter into his glory? And beginning with Moses and with all the prophets, he explained to them the things concerning himself in all the scriptures.
So he listens to them. I mean, he asks them, what are you talking talking about, they throw back a funny, you must be the only one in the world who doesn't know what's going on. Actually, he's the only one in the world who does know what's going on. You wonder if Jesus is laughing. It's just, it is really, so they tell him, and he listens to them. He listens to their story, to their perspective, their perception of things. Actually, what he's listening to is their reality, the actual reality that they are now walking in and living in, that they have created. It's not really reality, but it's the one that they created, and it's what they're walking in. Jesus' response to them is saying, "O foolish ones." And the context of that, he's calling them foolish as a result of determining their reality by their senses. In other words, this is what they see, this is what they hear, therefore. Jesus is labeling that foolish when you're going by your senses. The same way as he refers to foolish virgins who don't have oil for their lamps. And that's not the foolish part. The foolish part is when the wise ones say, they know that the bridegroom's coming, but they say, go buy your own oil. They do. They leave the place. They walk away from where the bridegroom is to go get oil so they could see the bridegroom. If you think about it, that's pretty foolish. It's the same word that he uses for the builders. Remember, some build their house on a rock, some build it on sand. So when things get tough, what happens? Everything falls apart because they were foolish. They decided to build in the way that they were going to build. The whole point Jesus is making here, in fact, these guys are borderline. In the Old Testament, a couple different places, it says a fool has said in their heart there is no God. Actually, when they left Jesus dead on the cross and were walking in a different direction, you notice he doesn't say to them, that they're wicked or anything like that. They're foolish because they're using their senses as a barometer for their reality. And he says that they're slow to believe. They're slow of heart to believe, which is not unbelief. It just means they're distracted by their senses. They're very sensual, but in the wrong way. It's not that we're not supposed to use our senses, obviously. But when we determine our reality, when something that doesn't fit according to our senses sends us into a tailspin, and we find ourselves walking away from the place we should be walking towards, we're foolish. Something is wrong. Psalm 92, verses 5 and 6.
How great are your works, O Lord! Your thoughts are very deep. A senseless man has no knowledge, nor does a stupid man understand this.
And he's not calling them stupid, but he is calling them a bit senseless, in the sense that they lack spiritual senses. They've given over their spiritual senses to their natural senses, what they can perceive. And then they're making their reality based on that. Remember, we're talking about mature discipleship. What do we do when things don't fit? Well, the things that don't fit are mainly happening because of our perception and that whole thing. It's the same way with the guys in John 21. In Luke 24, we read that as they approach Emmaus, they're all set. There's a big difference between where they're going and where he would have gone. He would have taken them further. I believe that's what he's saying to us. He would take us further. But we keep wanting to stop at a certain place. And he's saying, but I want to take you further in our relationship. I want you to know me more, to recognize me in more situations. Instead of looking at a situation at work and throwing it into your senses immediately and coming up with a reality, look for me because I'm there. And maybe in ways, most likely in ways, you don't even recognize me, but yet I am there. This is the way my plan always was for you to get to know me. Peter is one of these guys. I'm going fishing. I can't cope. I'm sorry. This is what I do. I get in boats. I put my, bait on the hook. I throw it in the water. I catch fish. I come back. This is the world I live in. I don't live in this whole great big symbolic world of what fish represents, what bread represents, what the sea represents, I don't live in that world. And Jesus is saying, oh yes you do, but you're in denial to that world. You'd rather live in the sensual world instead of in the spiritual one. And actually they're one and the same thing. And the one that I am living in is in the real world, but can't be perceived through the real world. It's our spiritual senses that have to be activated. Just like the guys on the road to Emmaus, when Jesus is on the shore, he's not supposed to be there. He meets us in Jerusalem, remember, in the room. That's where he meets us. We've gone 60 miles from that room. So when this guy on the seashore is sitting there, they don't recognize him. Why? Because he's not there. Simple as that. He's not there. Yes, he is. No, he's not. He's back in Jerusalem. See, these are all mindsets that we've got about Jesus, where he is, why he is, what he does. And one thing that the mature disciple, what we're growing into in our relationship is we're not wrong, but we're not right. The things that we know and that we've experienced, that's great. But there's so much more. And mature disciples realize that. And they're looking for him at times and places that we know he must not be. It's not so much a faith problem as an imagination one. Do I want to believe that he was standing by so I can continue to question what kind of a God is this? Or perhaps he's doing all that he said he would do, that he would never leave us nor forsake us. I'm not saying that the mature disciple lives in this world of la 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 la, but he does live in a world that Jesus is creating that says, but you can use your imagination and your faith to believe me for those kinds of things. The way I see it, Jesus was a full human being. It says that he came to them. In the Luke 24 passage, it says he drew near and he walked with them. I could add a little. For 33 and a half years, he drew near us as a human being. We got it. All of us in this room got it. But then we have these accounts of him drawing near, and the people who knew him the most didn't know him. And we have to come to grips with that. Could it be that that is the place right there where he's calling us, a place of getting to know him more, so that when we hit the places of the things, this doesn't fit, that we're not going into a tailspin. We're not spending our lives trying to figure out why, but maybe perhaps using our imagination to come to a place of greater faith as a result, which is what we have to come to if we're going to be moving toward a spiritual development and maturity. Peter would say, let's go fishing. Seriously, let's just go do what we do, instead of spending our lives doing what we don't do, actually. Giving more and more rooms to God, becoming totally flame. You know what slowed you down is you're getting caught up in what you see, what you hear. The reality that you're creating is slowing you down. What would happen in our lives if every instance where we say, surely Jesus is not here, whatever that might be, I don't know, he is. What if he actually disappeared in them? Because they said, stay with us, live with us, which Jesus said he would do. And that every place they were, he was.